she said, "So you think my parents shouldn't have called me that?" Right in front of him. And he said something like, "If they wanted you to live in France, no." Hi, my name is Sandrine. My family comes from Madagascar, but I grew up in France, and my dad is also partly Chinese. I'm 26 and I've only recently met someone outside of my family who has a very similar background. His name is Yassine, and we just took a class together at the University of Pennsylvania this semester. We realized that we both came from parents who immigrated to France, low-income families. He's from Arabic background, I come from Madagascar, so African roots. And he's been studying French and Francophone literature, now he's doing a PhD in the US, and we just found so many similarities about our upbringing, our vision on the world. We were just dreaming about how we can change the world and make it a better place together, so it was really meaningful. So the Malagasy community is very close-knit, so my parents used to bring us to gatherings with other people from Madagascar, and we would share food or go to church together. But we've never really talked about deep stuff, I want to say. It's always large gatherings with all of our families, we share food and we talk about how school is going and what's your favorite movie, and everyone goes home. So we have a similar background, but we've never talked about that background. But I did meet people from Madagascar who grew up in France. When the professor is calling everybody's name, make sure everyone's here and trying to learn the pronunciation, every time they'd have Sandrine written on the list, because it's my legal name, my first name, I would have to tell them, actually my name is Faniry. It doesn't help that my last name is also super long, so right from the get-go, first class, everyone remembers your name, the teachers remember you. It's really not that great when you're trying to hide in the back of the class. Sometimes it made me feel very different from the beginning. So I had this really difficult teenager existential crisis when I went to high school, where I decided, okay, new start, I'm gonna fit in and I'm gonna be Sandrine and not Faniry. And I explained it to my parents, and it created a lot of pain, because then friends would come at home and they would know me by Sandrine, and my parents obviously would call me Faniry. And I had the discussion with my parents. I was asking them, why you call me Faniry at home, but my first name is Sandrine on the paper, on the passport? That's when we had the discussion of how people would perceive you. Because they told me that the reason why they put it in that order is because the French sounding name would help me on the job market or any type of discrimination that I could face later. And it did help me, and I'm still using that name when I'm applying for jobs. And it doesn't help that my job is to teach French, so then I don't want to be perceived as, does she really speak French, or what is this weird sounding name? But then I say my first name is Sandrine. You're actually French. So I think that's the only discussion I think that we had with my parents, and it came from a lot of pain on my part from middle school, trying to change my name, deciding at some point that I'll tell people that they can call me whatever. It's always this question of how am I going to present myself. People calling me Faniry is kind of giving them an access to a more personal side of me, like my true self type of thing. And Sandrine might just be this name that I use to have more opportunities at work and be perceived as less threatening. Because not different, because having an actual French name. I don't think French people feel threatened by Malagasy people specifically. I think French people are threatened about difference. And especially what's been going on recently, the huge Islamophobia that's been growing in France. There's this confusion in people's mind, this same fear of people who are different. I remember one thing that really annoyed me one day is There was this scandal on national TV. A politician said that if he was elected, he would want to forbid people to have names that don't sound French. And he said that on national television. He said that names that sound like, I don't know, Mohammed should be forbidden, because if you're coming to France and you want to be part of the French society, you should be named Pierre, Paul, or whatever. What was really painful about it as well is that he said that in front of a journalist. I admire her courage, because her name was a name that Zemmour would say that doesn't sound French precisely. I think her name was Absatou, something like that. And then she said, "So you think my parents shouldn't have called me that?" Right in front of him. And he said something like, "If they wanted you to live in France, no." So yeah.
Wow, love that.
Yeah. Next question.
Yeah.
So in Madagascar, there are different ethnic groups. There's what we call the Mern. Those are the people who live in the center of the island, around the capital city. Then the people on the coast, who are called Côtiers. I am personally Mern. So people at the center of the island, what people in Madagascar refer to as Mern, are lighter skin, and the people who live on the coast, the Côtiers, are darker skin. There is very much this problem in Madagascar right now. People from the coast, Côtiers, are less valorized because, for example, when you go there and you turn on the TV, most people are Meren, most people are light skin on TV. Essentially what I'm trying to say is that colorism in Madagascar, but anywhere in the world, is very much still there, because there's still this idea that the lighter your skin is, the better you are. I don't want to speak for the people who are Côtiers, but I've seen more and more young Malagasy people call out this colorism in Malagasy culture. There's also this debate on where Malagasy people come from. Some Malagasy people say that they don't want to be seen as black, which could also be tied to colorism. But it's really hard to talk about these issues nowadays in Madagascar, because I don't think there has been anything that documents this. But it's definitely something that's happening right now in Madagascar, but also I want to say in the rest of Africa as well. And it's definitely still a consequence of the colonization and the racism that's still happening today, for sure. In terms of colorism?
Yeah, the different tribes, different ethnic groups.
I'm not sure, because again, I don't feel like I should be the one speaking on what it would take for the island to be more inclusive. A lot of Malagasy intellectuals who studied in France or the US but have never lived there pretend that they know better about what people in Madagascar should do. I think it's for the people who live there and who've lived there their entire life to figure out. And my answer is I don't know, essentially.
Strong response.
Oh, I love that question. I was born in Madagascar. The first language that I learned was Malagasy. And then I left when I was 1 year old. Arriving in France, I had a babysitter who obviously didn't speak any word of Malagasy. And I would communicate with her with the language that I've learned, and she would not understand me, and it was apparently very frustrating for me to know that I'm saying something that makes sense and having someone for the first time not understanding what I was saying. The experience with the first babysitter was so awful that I had to change and find another one. But what happened after that is I went to school in France, obviously, primary school, middle school, and I completely forgot about Malagasy. We spent way more time at school than we do with our family, actually. The whole day you spend at school, you speak French, and then you come home 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. So I think there was, at the same time, this process of me forgetting my native language and at the same time rejecting it unconsciously. I wanted to fit in. At home, my parents would still speak Malagasy. They speak Malagasy to each other. They speak Malagasy to me and my brother, but they also speak French. So it's like, it's a weird mix of only my family can understand what we're saying. We would start a conversation, half of a sentence is Malagasy, the other half is French. It doesn't make sense at all unless it's us. What I'm proud about is actually they really purposely kept that. What's really nice about it is that I'm in a place where I can understand most of what people say in Malagasy. I can hold a conversation, I can speak. I realized when I was, I guess, in high school that I decided that I want to reconnect with my roots. I want to learn Malagasy. I remember the first time that I came back to Madagascar like, for a vacation, the first time that I actually remember as a child. And we turned on the news and I didn't understand what they were saying. I was really shocked to not understand a language that I thought I spoke fluently because I always understood my parents at home. Or the fact that we went to go shopping for souvenirs when we were there. And in Malagasy culture, there's this thing where you bargain for prices. That's the thing. You always bargain for prices. So my dad was trying to bargain for good prices for the souvenirs that we were going to get. And I arrive, I start speaking Malagasy with my French accent. The vendor is like, oh, so you're a tourist, you're from France, so you must have more money, so I'm not bargaining the price. It's a funny anecdote, but it also came with pain because it was the first time I realized I spoke Malagasy with a French accent. Because at home I didn't realize I had that. We do speak a blending of both at home. It created also situations where I would invite friends at home. My parents would speak to each other in Malagasy. My friends wouldn't understand. And it created very interesting reactions from people who loved it to people who felt uncomfortable. And I remember a very personal and recent experience as well where one of my former best friend from middle school, who might be the friend that I invited the most at home when I was a kid. I saw her again recently over the summer, and we had a discussion about the recent French presidential elections, how racism in France has been going worse and worse and worse, and we ended up speaking about languages because we went to Paris, and Paris is a very multicultural city and a lot of people were speaking different languages. And she voiced saying at some point that she felt uncomfortable with people speaking other languages around her because I think, to be fair, I think she also grew up in a very countryside setting in France where I don't think she was used to people speaking other languages around her. I remember feeling hurt about that because I thought back to all the times where she was at my home and my parents would speak Malagasy. Then I wondered, maybe all this time she just felt uncomfortable and she never said anything. I think the language question is very much something that's interesting and that's linked to race and racism in France. The University of Pennsylvania is the first and only setting where I ever had an opportunity to take a Malagasy class. It's the only university in the US that has an advanced Malagasy curriculum. There is absolutely not one university in France that offers Malagasy language classes. So the fact that you have to go to the US to reconnect with your root, to learn the Malagasy language when Madagascar used to be a French colony, but there's no one teaching the language in France. That was also ironically weird as well. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
No, you said it good. Just
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I do want to say though that those are my personal experiences and my personal feelings, and that some people might have other insights on the situation, and especially, like I said, people who actually grew up in Madagascar and who can say more about Malagasy culture. And I do feel though that race and racism in France is a topic that not a lot of people discuss and that needs more attention. So I feel really honored, privileged, and humbled to share my story today. So that's it.